Hello and welcome to the Life by Design podcast, brought to you by Strategic. This podcast is all about helping you live your great life. Hello and welcome back to the Life by Design podcast. This week I'm joined by Mike McGraw, Senior Advisor and Partner here at Strategic.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be good to have you, and I'm really excited today. This is something that hits home for me, as I know it does for you. We're going to kind of talk about retirement benefits for teachers and New York State pension and kind of all of that, and what teachers should be looking out for.
Great.
Yeah. And so, Mike, kind of maybe give us a little background on why this is important to you and maybe how you know about it.
Sure. So I used to be a teacher in my previous life. Taught for 5 years in New York State, so I was part of the retirement system. My wife is a teacher, and a few other family members are also teachers here in New York State. So it is something I have a lot of familiarity with, and it can get confusing and a lot of intricacies. So I'm very happy and excited to be talking about it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping today too, you know, for me, my wife works in the school system too. She's not a teacher, but she's in like the administrative side. And so, you know, just hearing about this and understanding a little bit, this is as much for me as it is for the listeners. So I get to know what I should be telling her when I go home today.
Of course,
so, yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, let's get started. And like, what's something vital that teachers need to understand about their retirement benefits, maybe earlier or mid-career?
Sure. So I think to start, a big difference in, let's say, a state employee or a teacher for their retirement planning is this pension or defined benefit plan.
Yeah.
So back 30 plus years ago, these were very prevalent in all industries, not just state employees, but even large companies. They offered these defined benefit plans where it's essentially a promise to provide a steady stream of income in retirement for employees. Yeah. Well, that shift started in probably the late 80s, early 90s, where companies realized it was quite costly to them. And so the shift to a defined contribution plan, which is what most private employers offer now, which the most common is a 401k plan, where employees kind of have the onus to save their own money for retirement versus the defined benefit plan of the company or employer promising a series of payments upon retirement. So that shift was kind of eye-opening to most of the private industry, but fortunately for state employees and teachers, it is still one of their primary sources of retirement planning. And so the intricacies involved in it can get complicated. And so that's why us as financial advisors are here to help those who are in that industry.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I kind of wanted to bring up today, because it comes up in my life, you know, my mom was a teacher as well, is I have state benefits. Like I'm good. I'm all set. Like I'm good for life. And I think there's a little nuance to that. It's not just a one size fits all for everyone.
Sure is. Yeah. So that's maybe something that most folks need to be educated on, where they're used to the compensation that they're receiving while they're still working, and hopefully that increases each year up until they're ready to retire. And then when it does come time to retire, they don't maintain that same salary / compensation in retirement. Yeah. There is a calculation within the pension benefit that they should be aware of so that they can plan on what that stream of income is going to look like when they do decide to hang it up and enter that next phase of their life.
Yeah, and is like, I know there's some options out there for like supplemental savings. You know, like one of the things my wife was approached with was like a 403B,
Sure.
right? And I think we've talked about this, you and I, about how, sure, that sounds great, but maybe depending on your life, you may not have enough money to
Sure.
also add into that, or you think that your pension is covering you.
Sure. Yeah. So that is a defined contribution plan that has been added to as a benefit to teachers or state employees, where they can save some of their own money, put that away for retirement. That will give them, as you said, a supplemental source of income in retirement. But again, depending on their life circumstance, it's not all that different from when we talk to younger clients about starting to save early. Most likely in the first however many years that they're working in the state system, they might have a little bit extra discretionary income that they can put away, as opposed to spending every penny that they earn. But once life events happen,
Yeah.
marriage, children, that's where a budget could get a little bit more limited, and they might not have that extra income to save. So having that conversation to begin saving in this 403B account early in their teaching careers. They can always stop if they feel it's not part of their budget anymore due to any of these life events, but it is going to just give them another option when it does come time to retire. And that's one thing, no matter what industry folks work in, having options when it comes to retirement income is going to give you so much more flexibility versus just saying, nope, I have my pension, I'm going to rely on it, and I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, some people look at Social Security in a similar vein, where they're not all that different, but it's very important to at least have a conversation with someone like us here at Strategic to at least go through those options, play through scenarios, and figure out what's best for them.
Yeah, and there was a lot in there about getting it early before my life events happen, and kids and marriage, and all this. But what does like catch-up contributions look like for like 50 plus? Like I can still, it's not too late. I can still make some contributions. Let's say my kids are out of the house. I'm catching back up. I've got all this extra discretionary income now because I don't have to feed 4 teenagers anymore. But,
Of course.
I'm over 50. Like, what's my catch-up look like?
Yeah, of course. So as with any defined contribution plan, such as the 401k, upon turning the age 50, you do have that ability to save more than what the maximums are set by the IRS every year. So that certainly, most likely, you'll be in a scenario where now you do have some of that additional income, because most teachers are on what's called a step scale, where every year they do get a small increase in their pay. So in their 50s, more than likely is going to be their highest earning years. So that's where you could have that next conversation. Hopefully they started early, maybe had to pause due to the life events, and now they're in a position where, okay, our kids are out of college. We now have some more income that we can save, and there is that. If they hit the maximum, which is approximately $23,000 a year, they are afforded another $7,500 where they can put away additionally to, as you said, it's a catch-up. So it's allowing them to play catch-up if they maybe weren't able to save in those years that maybe cost a little extra.
Yeah. So, and we kind of touched on 403B. There are other vehicles though that folks can contribute to get them more additional savings.
Sure. Yeah, and that's where partnering with an advisor is extremely helpful, and to know what your options are. Most likely it will be in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. There are limits and income limits to how much you can save, and if you're able to save based on how much you're earning. But if you do fall in those ranges, certainly having, again, flexibility. That's very important when, especially in state employees or teachers, where they know they're going to have the pension, but then maybe they have a vision of their retirement lifestyle being a little bit more lavish and wanting to do more, and in that case they may need that additional savings and vehicles to have for supplemental income for those situations.
So between, like, for instance, traditional IRA and Roth IRA, the difference between them is when the taxes are
You got
taken
it.
out, right?
You got
So
it.
one is taxes are taken out now, and then when you retire, you don't pay taxes
Sure.
again.
Yep.
And the other is you don't pay taxes now, and they take them out when you retire,
Right on.
as you take out your distributions. So how does 403b fall into that too?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we are seeing a little bit of an evolution on your options when you enter into. There's also what's called a 457B, which is not all that different from a 403B, but especially in New York State, it's part of the New York State Deferred Compensation Plan that allows you, again, more flexibility. You have maybe a traditional option and a Roth option where you're not subject to those smaller limits of a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, and you do have the ability to save more if you're able to.
Yeah, right.
Especially when we talk about those catch-up years, though, and it's important for folks to know that there is flexibility. A lot of it sometimes for teachers does depend on the school district and what they agree to offer to their employees and the teachers. But that's again why we play as a financial advisor an important role in making sure they understand and they're doing what's best for them based on their goals, based on their vision.
So, generally, what percentage of salaries do teachers usually contribute, and how does that translate to their income during pension?
No, I think this is a good moment to talk about the tiered system in the retirement system for both New York State employees and teachers. So depending on when you enter into the system, so essentially the year that you were hired, you are in a tier. So this is dating back to the New York State. I know the New York State teachers retirement system was brought out in the early 1920s. So it's been around forever. And between about 1920 and 1970, it was just one system. So everybody who entered into the system received the same benefit upon retirement, same rules, same everything. Now, in the early 70s, they shifted it. Must be because they realized that maybe it was too good of a benefit, but that's where they came up with the tiered system. So tier 1 through now, if you enter the system, at this point in time, you're in tier 6. And so the tier 4 is really where it was, I think, from the early 80s up until the late 2000s. If you entered into the retirement system at that point in time, you were in tier 4. And then they established tier 5 and now tier 6. So what all that means essentially is it controls when you can receive what they call the full benefit. So there are ways to earn a partial benefit, but if you want to earn your full benefit, it is based on your age at retirement and how many years of service you have into the system. So the big ones are 55 and 30. So if you attain the age of 55 and you have 30 years into the system, you can retire with full benefits. Okay. And so that was the common all throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And then, again, there was a shift, and the pension people must have said, we might run into some problems if we continue with this. They had to place some bigger restrictions on it. And now, essentially, 62 is the age. Okay. So if you enter into the retirement system, you're looking at, you have to work till 62 until you can get the full benefit. And then the other big shift was how much you have to contribute into the system. So it's pretty similar to Social Security. As we all know, when we're working in our working years, if you look at your pay stub, you see a Social Security tax. We're essentially paying into the Social Security system for a promise that when we turn a certain age, we will receive that back in a form of monthly payments. Pension system with the state is very similar. So I'll go back to this tier 4 because it's the widest range and the most common for folks that maybe are retiring today. You paid 3% of your salary into the system for 10 years. After the 10 years were over, you're not paying anything else into the system. And when you do go to retire, you collect that pension, which lasts for the rest of your life. They up that for tier 5 to 3.5%. And they changed it. It's not 10 years, it's your entire time in the system.
Career, yeah.
So you're paying that 3.5% of your salary your entire career. Tier 6 lowered it back to 3%, but they now have a range between 3 and 6%. Okay. So that's based on your income level. So I think might not have the exact numbers, but I think if you're making $45,000 or less, you're paying 3%, and if you're making, I think, $100,000 or more, you're paying 6%. Okay. And that is your entire career. So as you can imagine, not all that, again, different from Social Security, where the Social Security system said, we got to make some changes or else we're going to run out of money. Right. Yeah. So that was essentially the teachers' retirement system and the state retirement system saying we need to make some adjustments. And so you can do the comparison and say that people that are entering it now, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, right. Especially when you're looking at some of that supplemental as well, right, in your income.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. I think that was a really good primer for vehicles, for retirement, for teachers. And, we're going to have Mike back on to dive a little bit deeper. So thank you.
You're welcome.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Please see the full disclosure in our show notes for more information.